Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Fisher, the host of the Cult Following podcast. Cult Following is a podcast that studies the personalities and common traits of cult leaders and their followers. Get the real story behind these infamous and oftentimes tragic cults from a new perspective through exhaustive research and from interviews with people that were there. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of No Earthly Explanation with your hosts, myself, Brittany Barbieri, and my partner in crime, Donald Schmidt. Don, it's been about a week. How are things going? You double parked your UFO last week. Did you get everything worked out?
Oh yes. And the projects keep springing up, which is wonderful, and that it continues of paranormal still continue to rise in interest. And it's like that wonderful line in my favorite UFO movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and the scientist who was basically playing the Albert Einstein, the number one scientist in the country at that time, and the alien comments to him about you have great faith as a scientist, and his response was, it's not faith, it's curiosity. And so I think we all have this thirst for knowledge, and especially for things that either go bump in the night or just these elusive phantoms that we're constantly, chasing. My colleague Jerry Clark, one of the most prolific writers in the field of UFOs, I made the comment to him about chasing this phantom, and he said, "Yes, Don, but just think of it. At some point, it stops and turns and stares you right in the eye. Then what do you do?" And well, either you shake its hand or you run. So
Exactly.
I don't think you have many other choices. So,
or you freeze and it kills you. It's one of the three.
No, I don't freeze. I'm one of those. My dad used to always say, "You don't blink." I was like, "No, I don't," because it gives the your opponent a chance, an opening. So
that's true.
Don't blink. Don't blink.
That's true. Well, on that topic, we have a perfect guest for today's show. Absolutely. And both of us have worked with him. He's a dear friend to both of us. And I think as far as like on all aspects of the field, we can kind of touch a little bit on everything with him. So I think without further ado, we will bring on our guest, the famous and well-known Mr. Ben Hansen. Ben. How are you? Yes, the infamous.
The introduction that I don't blink. I was trying to make a connection. I guess I don't either. Have you seen? They've been photoshopping my picture into famous like Roswell, like scenes. Like Marcel emptying the craft, a weather balloon and everything.
Yep.
And then I think I was in the Westall photo with the kids holding up the UFO. So apparently I'm popping up in history now too. I was there. It's funny because
considerably older, wouldn't that? Wow.
Well, yeah. It's funny because you can put that out there and I can repost what people make and Photoshop me, but if I don't put some sort of like tongue-in-cheek, haha. People actually, there's actually people who are like, this is really strange, Ben. That guy's just like you. You're looking into this, or other people might assume that I'm claiming to be a time traveler, and I'm like, oh, we take ourselves too seriously.
Oh my God.
We did that with our Roswell movie, where we took the original Roswell Daily Record newspapers with the photographs of Major Marcel crouched down holding up sections of the weather balloon, and we inserted actor Kyle MacLachlan, who was portraying Marcel in the movie. And then later, those pictures circulating, they were questioning, did Marcel look like Kyle MacLachlan because he looks just like Kyle MacLachlan? It's like, no, it's the actor portraying him. So right, you almost have to explain to a whole audience of people, what was intended.
Yeah, you got to follow pretty tight, especially because they're ready to pounce on you, and and that's why Brittany and I have taken a little bit of a break, because we want the stuff that we put out to be, I guess the best received possible, to inform people, and I think there's certain mediums that just are not very conducive to that, and unfortunately, there's too many people willing to just take down, destroy, criticize, misinterpret, and so I don't want to start the show off negatively, but anyone who goes into the field, as both of you know, have to have a thick skin, and just stick to what and what you do best, and not care what people say, because we're, all of us started into this, I think, out of curiosity, not because we cared what other people thought. But yeah, it's difficult, and there's not, if you're getting into this for monetary gain or recognition or whatever, you're in the wrong field.
Oh, for sure.
And yet there's a whole faction within the field that the moment you do make $1, you write a book, you do an appearance, you consult on a program, oh, you're in this for the money.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what you do for a living isn't. We have our bills, we have our families, we have our expenses. You would deprive us of at least being influenced and inspired enough to go out and make $1 by this. I'm sorry. For you, then it's just a hobby. For us,
Yes.
It's not. It's a profession.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, is to set aside, unless you were independently wealthy, to set aside your life to dedicate towards this. There's very few places that will pay you a salary for it.
That's true.
I think Jan Hynek was lucky, but that was a side gig. That's something he was able to do, that the government had a contract, and the very few people who were doing it now, such as like Arrow, it's an assignment. These people didn't aspire to do it, and so it's like us who, excuse me, want to either write or lecture, you have to kind of have it as a side hobby.
And yet it shouldn't be a hobby, because then it takes away from the level of commitment and devotion. It's something that you can sit and do as you're watching television, when it's not, because you've been a prime example of being out in the field. Both of you have. And I respect and admire you all the more for that, because, as you had mentioned, Dr. Jan Hynek, who was my scientific director, and he loved being in the field. He loved hands-on. He loved talking to witnesses. He loved, being led to another informant, a whistleblower for that matter, who had inside information that he wasn't going to get from the Air Force, the Pentagon, Washington. And so you go out and you make things happen. That makes us proactive. And I think that's what a lot of our colleagues resent, because we have the gumption, we have the wherewithal, because of our own commitment, once again, to getting to the truth, that you have to go out and dig it up yourself. It is not going to come over the phone or over the internet. And then I wouldn't believe it or trust it to begin with.
Well, that's an excellent point as well, because there's those who are trying to uncover, and then those who sit back, and Brittany and I have talked about this a lot, and I don't mean to paint with such a broad brush that everyone who is a skeptic or labeled as a debunker is in this group, but most of them do not do proactive research. They sit back kind of like a dog waiting for scraps of food. Right. And so when that drops off the table, they go after it and they pick the easy stuff, and then they throw it out to the public and say, see, I solved it. But the true difficult work would be to go and find something of their own case, and say, look, this is a big anomaly that's come up, and I've found some reasonable explanations for it, and to listen to, I think, what is in most cases more than 50%, if not 70% or so, of all evidence is witness testimony, and it's time and time again, pushed off to the side and written off because it's not physical evidence. And so, we're only focusing on the videos, the photos. In fact, when I emailed you earlier, it was a couple of weeks ago, Don, I was in Ohio State.
Right.
And the Ohio State, I guess they call it.
Yeah,
and
Columbus.
There was a professor who is, I guess you could say, friendly to the UAP topic. He assembled a group of people. We had a workshop, and I felt pretty intimidated because I was one of, I think, maybe 2 people who didn't have a PhD there, maybe 2 or 3. And I was invited to present a paper that I had written, and our workshop was kind of, see if we could do some sort of compendium and put these papers together. And I was out there at Ohio State where, and Dr. Hynek was, and where, right, he taught, and Jenny Zeidman, had met him in the observatory, and I was out looking for his office. And it was kind of like this cool little journey to see where the, what was the observatory? The Macmillan, I think, Macmillan Observatory.
Right.
And what was it?
Macmillan. And
Macmillan,
then the other one that he worked as far as once he was at Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois, which was Lindheimer, right?
Okay, yeah. So I thought, well, he probably taught in that classroom, because there's classrooms in there I read. There was the observatory, and he probably had his offices in there. And I'm getting there, and I'm like, okay, let's go. Looking on the map, and boom, I'm reading more, and I'm like, oh, it was torn down in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this little pond, there, and nothing else around. But it was cool to be there, and now I'm totally forgetting the point of my story.
Well, you're retracing, you're walking in the steps of history. You're walking the steps of someone preceding you, but having influenced all of us in the sense you want to breathe the air they did. You want to take in as far as even where they, got their beginnings.
Yeah, and it was something about the debunkers too, and I can't remember, but it was like, at any rate, what's that?
Hynek was a skeptic at first. I mean, he had his own reason as to why he wanted to do this, and basically, take his own hammer to the nail, as you would say. So it's, they all start somewhere. But
I think my point was that if you look back at the time period, we didn't have the technology that we do today. No. Not by any means, right? They were so lucky if they got, a clear photo, and that's why people and pour over like the Rex Heflin photos, or you look at the Dexter, Michigan case, you had drawings, right? And so the witness description, the drawing became, well, okay, if this is accurate, and the witness is telling the truth here, then what could this be? But you see, there was a huge shift from the importance of the witness testimony to what we have now, where all the expectation is this cell phone. There's over, I think, 4 billion of them in the world now, 3 or 4 billion, and most of them have cameras, right? And so this expectation, I lecture on this, is to why all of a sudden we discredit out of hand. Well, okay, that's what the witnesses say, but we're not looking at that. We're only looking at what was captured in the video or photo, right? And it's a huge mistake. We would love it. Scientists would love to have all the sensor data that we can get and analyze it. Yes, do that. But if you're trying to apply that to the broader question of, do these things exist and what's their provenance? I think that is it's a, ontological, epistemological error. You can't just say we're only going to look at sensory data and everything to determine whether this is a real phenomenon. So anyways, that was kind of a theme of a lot of the conference that we had, because you've got a lot of academics who are friendly to the subject, but how do we get the larger academy to accept it and to study it as a thing? And it was funny because so many of them were just dipping their foot in the subject, and they were still way back here arguing whether the Nimitz video was, a sensory artifact, and then that might explain the whole phenomenon. I was like, oh gosh, there needs to be a college course in this, 101, and you need to learn all the way back from the 40s to know what's been going on.
Right.
Yep.
Right. See, I had lectured on 2 occasions at Ohio State, and prior to that, I was the first UFO lecturer at Battelle Institute. And they have all those scientists from Battelle all in the front rows taking notes.
Yes.
And it was one, and the thing is, because it provided us with fresh material, new leads. It opened doors, and that's the wonderful thing. And you've been experiencing this yourself, Ben, where you continue to establish your network, that as evidence would present itself, you know exactly who to go with. You know who to contact. If you had a photograph, if you had a video, if you had a piece of physical evidence. Now, in our case, like with Roswell, because all the national laboratories are government contracted, we have always had to go out of the country because you'll never see that piece of evidence again. It always has a way of, conveniently disappearing. But the skeptics, they need to realize that most of recorded history is all based on nothing more than eyewitness testimony.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that many an individual has been, has gone to capital punishment for no other evidence that I saw you do it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely. I make that case, and it's like it's a new idea. It's like the natural sciences. So you have this problem with, like in natural science and social science, like we're dealing with a phenomena that does not necessarily repeat, like a weather phenomenon. You have hot spots, you have things that can happen again, but you're also dealing with what I believe are beings, entities, maybe all the above, that have agency, right? They're agentive. So it means they show up when they want to show up. They're going to go where they want to go. And so you can't just set up an experiment and have it repeatable and say, well, if it happened here, it's going to happen again, and we're going to be able to record it, like you kind of do in the physical sciences. So it's a different approach, but it doesn't mean that the knowledge and the knowledge base in attaining it is any less valuable. So yeah, it's a lot of people don't get it, and unfortunately, media will only pick up on the stories of the latest couple of years, and they try to make a summary of the whole phenomenon and say, well, if we solve this, we've solved the whole thing, or whatever. So we know we don't want to bore the audience with getting into all of that, but those are some of the frustrations we deal with in the field.
It's interesting to me because it feels like if you were to switch to the paranormal aspect in search of spirits or spiritual domain or afterlife, right? We get accounts from people that tell us their testimony of either the location that's haunted or what they've experienced personally. And for us as investigators, we go, well, that's enough. Let's go investigate. Sometimes there is no video footage. Sometimes there are no physical evidence of any kind of haunting, yet their personal claim is enough for us to take the initiative to investigate. However, if that happens in the UFO community, it feels like it's not enough. It's not enough for us to go out and do an investigation all because you saw something. So I find it very interesting that it doesn't play the same factor in the field of ufology, but it's a major factor in like cryptid and ghost or demon or demonic. It's enough to initiate the first steps of investigation, as to where in the ufology, it's almost like, well, did you get abducted? Okay, well then I'm not going to waste my time. Where it's very frustrating. And you see that happen a lot. And I don't understand why, because you still need to, whenever I've talked to a witness, I've always felt like I have to hear them out, because you can normally tell when a witness is being honest. You can tell when it's a true incident by their demeanor, by their physical, appearance through the matter, how they talk to you, how they address you, the eye contact, the fear. You see it because they've never seen something like that. When you first hear your first UFO, you're shook, you're just like, I can't believe what I just saw. So it's a natural, real occurrence that you're witnessing by this individual. So it's like, you do have to meet with the person. You do have to listen to what they have to say. But then again, you also have to be there for them, because if we're not, who can they turn to when we do have a true occurrence happen? Just like the people in Roswell, if they didn't have anybody they could feel confident coming to and talking to, maybe we never would have heard anything about it. Maybe everybody would have been shut up, and then the leaking would have come out way, way down the road. But at that time, they were talking, people were discussing it because they felt that it was okay, because there were so many that had that account. But what if there was that individual that didn't have somebody to come talk to? So every time I have this discussion, I always try and stress the importance of still being an ear for someone with an account. Even if they don't have footage or a picture to back it, you still need to have them to be able to feel comfortable to come and talk to you about it. Because we all need that. We all need to be able to say, listen, I saw this. What do you think it is? And feel confident to know that you're not going to put them down. You're not going to try and debunk it right off the bat, or tell them what they saw that, you saw this, you didn't see this, and tell them what they saw that they didn't see. And that's not fair. Like, I do feel there should be a comfort or a safe space, especially in this field moving forward.
Now, Ben, you were the ringleader, so to speak. You were the main investigator on the Sci-Fi Channel's Fact or Fake. And you had, as we've discussed, you had a number of experiences, or you had a number of occasions where, again, you were out in the field and you were actually nervous and anxious to the point of being, fearful for your life in some of these situations. So could you recount at least one or two of them as you have described them to us in the past?
I think you're leading towards a particular story.
One in particular that I have waited years for.
Because I love it. It's a great story.
So if you remember, that one was actually, we did that for Canada History. It was UFOs Declassified, right? If it's the one that we're talking about. So we were set to film with Don and Roswell.
No, actually, you're getting ahead of me, Ben.
Oh, not that one.
Not that one. We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
But this was
this
the Bigfoot recruitment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did this have to involve somebody being in a suit?
And who was in the Bigfoot costume?
Well, that would be me. I was also in a lizard man costume.
Yep.
And that may have been a little bit more dangerous, honestly. So we're in South Carolina, and we were investigating the lizard man, and there was an apparent recent sighting, and this family had their vehicle destroyed with scratches and dents and everything on it, and this had happened back in the 80s too, where people were thinking, is it possible that a lizard man, we tested so many theories, in fact, that it might be an alligator in heat, right? That is like gnawing the car. And we brought out and tested the bite strength and everything, but in the end we decided to do what I call ethical hoaxing. Okay, so I'm not opposed to hoaxing if it's done ethically, for a social experiment, for a real purpose. And then quickly you come out afterwards and say, this was us, this is how we did it, and apologize if you want. Some things are just all fun and games, but when it's done maliciously, it really sets the work back. In this case, our goal was not to deceive people. It was to see how many people would, well, I guess you could say a little deception, to see how many people, if we put a viral video together, how viral would it go? And could a guy in a suit, create a lot of buzz to having people perpetuate this story? So at any rate, we got a Hollywood effects designer to help he had won awards for his lizard man costume, and it was very tight latex, and it was, you know, I can't remember what time of year it was, but it was kind of muggy. It was at night, and so I'm wearing this foam. Actually, it was like a lycra suit, really tight, and then the mask itself was a latex mask that was glued onto my face. But the thing that was hardest was I'd never ever worn contacts, and they wanted me to wear. The production thought it was a good idea, signed off on it. They wanted me to wear not only like cat colored yellow contacts, but those on top of the full, I think they call it a full sclera, right, which is the kind that Jim Carrey wore in
Grinch.
the Grinch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, he
So
wore the full black,
covers the full pupil, right?
Yeah.
the full
Full
eyeball. So
Yeah.
nobody, I don't think anyone asked if it would be okay to put one on top of the other. Okay, so remember, I'm learning for the first time how to wear contacts, and I got these things, and I'm like freaking out. So I put in the full one. You have to open your eye and like put your whole eyelid around it, and then on top of that, a secondary contact. And they said Jim Carrey, when he filmed that movie, had to have a Navy SEAL motivational speaker walk him through it each time, and he could only wear them for like 3 to 5 minutes at a time because he would freak out. And anyways, I have these things on, so I can barely see. And we're there in literally very rural South Carolina, and you know, trees all around us. And I've got this thing on, and they're like, okay, go out into the woods and we'll film you. And I'm sitting there doing what I think is like a good lizard walk. And I'm thinking, you know what? Look, I'm all about Second Amendment and everything, but there are people out there in the woods who probably not operating on a full deck of cards and shoot anything that moves, especially a lizard man.
Yep.
Right. Especially they think there's a big reward for a lizard man. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There might be a reward for that, right? And so luckily, I think we were far enough out there that it was kind of closed off. Nobody saw that one. No one saw the time I was dressed as Bigfoot. But when we put the video out, we couldn't say anything because the show hadn't aired. And so it was on YouTube, and it got, I think, a couple thousand views, and people were like, oh my gosh, look, this is exciting. And then even when the show aired, people were commenting, said, no, that was on fact or fake. Go look at the episode. And people were still defending it and saying, no, this wasn't them, and this is a real thing. And it's like, so as a social experiment, I think that it's really interesting that even you get people defending hoaxes when it's been proven to be a hoax.
Will to believe, right?
That want to believe. So in that case, there was no harm done to the lizard, but
but you were very uncomfortable, no doubt.
Yeah, very uncomfortable.
For your life. But then you had the same experience in the Bigfoot costume, where you had to then also repeat the scene over and over again, that you had to keep walking down through an area, retracing the area that the alleged Bigfoot did. And then again, the concern that someone's going to shoot me.
There's that concern, and it's like we filmed so many things that the insurance originally tell everything you plan on doing, right? And so like if I get on, it was like $5,000 extra in the insurance production had to pay. And so you tell them all that, and they're like, they consider it, and like, well, okay. So for example, we went scuba diving in Pennsylvania, and Racetown Lake, and we're looking for the Racetown Lake monster. And so like they sign off on them. Okay, scuba certified. Was I dry suit certified? No, not at the time. But they don't know those technical things. So they put me in the water in 43-degree water in, I think, February. And by the time we got to filming the scene where we're going to get in the water and look for the lake monster, it's 3 a.m. So it's things like that where it was my first time in open water wearing the dry suit. So it's like they do all the planning first off, and they're like, insurance. No. The lawyers get involved. We'll get sued. We'll get injured. But as soon as you get on set, pretty much anything goes. And you got the producer and stuff like, well, do you think you could do this? And I'm like, sure. Why don't we film at 3 a.m.? We'll get into the water
On a night dive.
And so we did have a safety dive. Jael, one of my co-hosts, same situation as me, and I are looking at each other through a full face mask because we have these intercoms on, and we're looking at each other, and they keep getting their camera gear ready, and they're not ready to film yet though. And I'm sitting there, basically, if you take a garbage bag and put it over your head and tie it around your neck tightly, and then around your whole body, and then cut a little window for you to see, that like. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, are you freaking out? And she's like, yeah, let's get in the water. I go, guys, it's got to happen now. And I'm not a claustrophobic person, but as soon as I did a back roll into the water, I was adjusting my buoyancy, and I couldn't tell if I was up, I was down. My flashlight 3 feet in front of me, and all I could see was sediment particles, and my ears started to really hurt. And I looked at my depth gauge and realized I was already 30 feet down, and I was sinking. And so once I adjusted that, and tried to find a rock shelf to level off at, our safety diver comes down, and I see him shoot up to the surface, and he's screaming. He's like, my eardrums are broken. He busted his eardrums, the safety diver. And so then our producer gets in the water, and he's like, okay, I'll film. His weight belt falls off, falls around his fins on his feet. And so he's dog paddling, freaking out. I'm like, these are experienced divers. And he's like, I'm out. I'm not going in there. So I'm saying, like, I come back up, and I'm like, what do you guys want to do? Like, we're supposed to be looking for the lake monster here. I have nobody film us. You're not getting the water. And he's like, here, take the camera and film yourselves. So we went down 3 a.m. and Jael are there, 3 visibility, looking around. And this is the first time it occurs to me. And I said, you know what? We do a lot of filming. We go a lot of places looking for things. And this is the first time it occurred to me, if the lake monster is real,
Right.
this would not be a good opportunity to meet. Right?
I think you would lose that situation, right?
You just come along and have a little snack and move along, because I have no idea where I am.
It first hit you at that moment, Ben, not before. After all awry, all of a sudden that thought immediately struck you, this is not a good place to be right now.
You have to put yourself out of that. Everything that I've done, and I do like a little, high adventure hobbies. You have to put yourself, especially when you got TV cameras behind you, it's almost like a false sense of security. And you've probably been there where you're hiking something or doing something, and you're so focused about talking to the audience or going into a little cave or doing what you're doing, and you totally forget this is probably dangerous.
Right.
And on UFO Witness, it was another thing. Like, we had to get this, they rented a plane, they paid for it, I rented it, and we were trying to recreate a UFO sighting out at Joshua Tree. And our big chunk of our day was part of this filming, and there happened to be like a 30 knot wind that picked up over the desert, which isn't horrible. It's like straight down the runway, but as I was tacking into the wind, and I'm like, it's easy to take off, and you're like, I got to land in this later. And I fly over there, and I'm literally like, what made me kind of ticked off is that it didn't make the cut. There, you're frozen.
Yeah, you were frozen on our end too.
What part?
On the part where you were talking regarding going up with it being cut, like it ended up being cut after that.
All right, let me hit that up quick. So what kind of made me frustrated is that they cut that whole scene out. the actual show. And so I told him, we rented the plane, we did all this stuff. It was a cool experiment. And so the network did a cool thing, and they added it as bonus content. So, and I think it's up on my website on the homepage at benhansen.com. You can see it. But anyways, flying along, and I'm tacking into the wind, almost like this, flying sideways, and coming down to about 400 feet, over the desert floor to make this work. And again, it's one of those things. It's like, I'm filming a TV show. Nothing can happen to me, but you remember, that's why we hire people who are safety people. And I had another pilot with me who are watching us, because it's like texting and driving. We do stupid things.
So kind of like an episode you were on where you were trying to be good and help save somebody, and you literally got tossed around and banged up against it.
Could we say, are we allowed to say the name?
I guess so.
Well, let's just say, yeah, we can say the name. You're in it. I mean, we're filming the Demi Lovato show, and I was there filming underwater, and let's just say it was high surf. It was very high surf.
Very.
And poor Demi, and her bodyguards were getting tossed around the water like I was, trying to help get fins and stuff on, and her friend lost her camera, and I lost my camera. It just got swept out of my hands as I was helping put the fins on Demi, and that had all the footage for the whole day, the underwater footage, and my several $1,000 camera and housing, and it just got sucked out in the ocean.
Yep.
Right. So if you watch carefully, I'm told, I haven't seen the episode.
I have.
If you watch carefully, Brittany says I'm in the background, flailing in the water looking for my camera.
Yep. When you see the diver standing next to Demi and Matthew on the shore from saving them from the surf, in the background, not too far from them, you can literally see Ben in his scuba gear, full mask, everything, like trying to get his balance and find that, you can see him searching for the camera and trying to everything. And then
were you reimbursed for your camera?
We found
it. It's so strange. They paid a diver to go out the next day, and they actually found it in there, wedged under rock in the surf, and it was minimally damaged. So we got the footage back. It made it, but I did what I never told them is I'm a contractor. I didn't want to make a big deal, but I ended up having surgery on that. What was that, a year and a half ago? I had surgery because I hyperextended my leg, flying around.
But what's really funny though is on that episode, the conditions for the surf that day, all the other dive boats and all the other divers canceled because the actual rollers that day were very high. It was 4 or 5 feet rollers, if not more. And even when we were leaving to head back to the other side from Catalina back over to the main island, we were at max, where they don't go out. It was 13 feet. And it was we're just right at it. Otherwise we wouldn't.
A couple of them almost fell overboard. That's for sure. So there are dangers involved, and the stuff that you don't hear because it doesn't follow a consistent storyline for people. You can't diverge and behind the scenes, Brittany and Ben almost died. Yeah. Or Dawn was almost, given a lethal dose of radiation from something.
Now wait a minute. Now listen.
That was actually my third time. But let's talk about one time.
Yes, because you understand now for years.
The unforeseen danger when it's the last thing you consider, but nonetheless, it's something that can hurt you years later. So why don't you set it up, Ben? Because it started out with somebody at Los Alamos National Laboratories.
Yes.
It was New Mexico State, wasn't it? Or no, yeah, okay. They were working there. That's right. They were working there.
Right.
So we were getting ready to film with Dawn on a Roswell episode. And a couple weeks before, I had a contact through a mutual friend reach out to me and claimed he said that he had a piece of metal given to him by, it sounded like an old Indiana Jones story. He's like, this guy was working with me at White Sands, and growing up, he met me in a parking lot and said, I hear you're into that Roswell stuff. Well, here's a piece of that crash. And he gifted him a piece of metal that he claimed with no more details, didn't say any details. He's like, here's a piece of that metal. Right. So is it some old codger who just thought it would be funny to give this kid, something that was unusual metal and just to perpetuate, this legend that, this old man gave it to him? Or did he really think it was? I have no idea. But it's these things that kind of like, when I heard the properties of the metal, is like, you just can't pass up on it. I mean, if this truly be, smoking gun and some of this metal that was recovered, let's go check it out. So I met with him, and this wasn't even scheduled for part of the filming because we didn't know if we could meet with him, and met him at his house, and he trusted me to take this thing. It was heavy. It's about this big and it was really heavy. And he showed me as he ran it across the cement that it sparked. I was like, whoa. So it sparks, it's heavy and dense. I know nothing about metallurgy, anything like that. And I'm like, it's got unique properties to it. Let's take it, because we were having some other metal tested, I think it's New Mexico State. And I was like, we'll take it to the lab, right?
Right.
Wasn't that it?
Yes. Yeah.
So we had some other samples, as we were doing our dig and searching. So we brought this to him kind of the end of the day. And the professor, he's like, yeah, it's just very interesting. I don't know. I mean, we'll take a sample, we'll make a sample thing, come back tomorrow, and we'll see if we can figure out what it is. But he started to cut it.
If you remember, they tried to cut it.
Yeah.
And they couldn't.
He ruined one of his saws, I think.
It intrigued us all the more. And then they finally cut it underwater. It was submersed, as far as with a diamond saw. And even then it was lighting up the whole basin as it was slowly trying to cut a piece.
Because I think we watched it, or the next day or something. I can't remember if he just told us, and he said that, oh, no, you're right. We watched him try to cut it. Mm-hmm. And it was like sparking, and he's like, it just chewed up my saw. Right. And then he used another one, and he got enough of a sample. He's like, okay, well, we got what we need. And they put it in an epoxy or a rosin thing, and that's what they put in a spectrometer. And so we go in the next, before the next day, right. I think what it was, or maybe it was the next morning. I was there at the hotel. I got a text or call, and he goes, I was just so intrigued by this, I couldn't wait. And so last night I tested it, and it came back to be something like 97 or 98% depleted uranium. And there was some magnesium and nickel, I think is what it was. And I was like, what does that mean? And he's like, I have no idea. I've never seen it in these proportions before.
Right.
And so he said, we'll get there in the morning. So we get there in the morning to film. And then the thought occurs to me, because let's back up. Let's back up a bit.
Okay.
When I received this piece, it was given to me in a little box. It was like a jewelry box.
Right.
And I was wearing a sport jacket, and on my inner pocket, I did not want to lose this thing. I'm like, God, I can't put it in my bag. What if this is the real deal? So I put it right in my pocket. And so from the moment I got it from the guy, which was like the whole day before, to having it tested and leaving it lab, it was in my inner pocket, right over my heart. So
right over your heart.
So
oh my God.
Coming in the morning, I was like, what was the chemical makeup of that? And he goes, well, we're going to do testing of it. But he's like, it was 97% uranium. And I said, isn't that normally most isotopes, aren't they highly radioactive? Now, I don't even know his name. I don't remember, and I don't blame him for that. But he peeked up and he goes, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
I said, "Do you have a Geiger counter?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And he goes, "I think I do."
Well, Ben, just to back up for a moment, when we arrived back at the lab, everything was taped off. They had considered evacuating the campus,
But
and they finally
that
decided
was after the morning, wasn't it?
Yes, first thing that next morning. And
Okay, because I couldn't remember if it was after he cut that he got the Geiger counter that day before, or if it was the morning we went back.
The evening before, late that evening, he took it upon himself to run a Geiger counter over it. And
okay. Well, no. I remember he brought the Geiger counter in for the first time when I mentioned it, because he went out of the room. So I don't remember if that was the first night, or in the morning, but he comes back in.
The morning,
and I set it on the ground, and I backed away from it, and he was literally 10, 15 feet away, and it starts going off.
That's right. The piece was on the ground. You're holding it at, waist level, and it is pinning.
Yeah, it was pegging the needle. By the time he was up to it, it buried the needle. And I was like, oh, so that was on my heart yesterday.
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting next to you and standing next to you, throughout. And it's like, they even suggested you two need to get checked. And then I'm talking to some other lab technician. Well, what had also happened while that was happening, I called up at the time, he was the director at the Nuclear Museum in Albuquerque, Jim Walters. And I described it to him, and he went, Don, you have a piece of an outer casing of an atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense for everything that we determined. And he said, well, you shouldn't touch that. It's like, well, it's a little late, Jim.
Too late.
But I'm talking to somebody in the lab, and he says to me, we had a similar incident the year before, and it was a gentleman who brought in a piece, and it was highly radioactive. And I said, oh, and what became of him? Oh, we think he died a few weeks ago. It's like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, nothing's wrong with Don and I.
Nothing's wrong. I have that third eye behind my.
Basically, what we learned is do use depleted uranium for the casings, and generally what they'll do is use those for testing, and they'll put them on a track and ram them into a wall, right, to see if that casing will protect a bomb so it won't detonate if it drops, like say from the plane on accident. And so they use it, and it's depleted, but it's still highly reactive. And I mean, that was a long story, but basically, I mean, what would follow up, I got back home, and I remember I was at Comic-Con, and my manager, calls me, and he's like, why is the FBI calling me? They're looking for you. I was like, who? What field office? Hopefully I know them. What's this about? And they for a long time I laugh about it now, but I was like, I didn't want to be on the wrong side of any list, and I cleared it up with them really fast. I was like, look, guys, we gave it back. I took it back to the guy, and I said, he's, as far as I know, a straight up really great guy. I don't know what this was, but at this point we were filming a TV show about Roswell and extraterrestrials and stuff. That's how I got involved. I had nothing to do with this. And I was like, so I gave him the information, and he called me and he said they're over here now with not only Bureau, but the Department of Energy, and I don't know if they came in full hazmat or partial or what, but they confiscated it. And people can look at that and say, oh, conspiracy, and I'm like, no, I think in this case it legitimately was a health concern, and some old guy who works somewhere, whether he did it deliberately or not, whether he knew what it was, I hope he didn't do it knowing what it was, but you never know. And
Do you remember that even the film crew, that they ran the Geiger counter over their equipment and they were picking up radiation. They were
well, the
picking
whole
up
lab had to be decontaminated, right? And they were
Yes,
kind of ticked at us at the
Oh, they
film crew.
were.
Like, look, like how did we know? You know, their safety department, because they're in hot water for a lot of men, and everyone got, you know, kind of reprimanded. Look, there was metal dust on their saws and everything
Thank God they cut it underwater, though. Can you imagine
Oh my
if they
God.
would have resisted? I mean, just the dust alone within
yeah,
the lab, but it was underwater, fortunately.
it was
Oh, it
probably a
would have.
big cleanup, right? And so
Mhm.
because of that, I now own 2 Geiger counters, and I bring them, and I'll
And
be
I have
bringing
two.
them
And
to
I
our
have two.
dig.
Right.
You have 2 as well?
Yes.
Yeah, just to double check, you know, anything that we find in the ground, we do it a quick little test, sweep it over. Okay, it's okay for now, you know.
A quick follow-up story on my part. One of the second time, it was actually the third time that I was exposed. It was at the Nuclear Museum when it was still at Kirtland Air Force Base, just down from Sandia Labs. And they had just reconstructed the B-29 that had been shipped in. It was called the Duke of Albuquerque. It had flown over the Mediterranean during the Korean War. And I'm sitting up in the cockpit, and I crawled in through the portal into the bomb bay, and that they allowed me to, you know, actually get inside and you know, really take in, you know, being in a, you know, the super fortress, the B-29. And I finally asked, did any of you check to see if this plane is hot? And they knew what I meant. Is it, you know, check to see if it was radioactive? And they went, oh, should we? And I said, well, considering it flew nukes, yes, I believe you should. So a few months passed, and I returned back, and I stopped at the museum, and I went out and back, and this time the plane was all roped off. You could not get within 100 feet of it. It was hot. It was
Oh my
radioactive.
God.
And there I was sitting up in the cockpit and crawling into the bomb bay. And
Yep.
so
You got probably you know, a couple years worth of x-rays or
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
radiation treatments.
So
out
at
glowing.
that same time, Ben, you it was right at the time that Bill Clinton had made his last appearance on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. And the discussion came up, UFOs, and then Roswell. And probably what a lot of people in the audience aren't aware of is that with the FBI, you did body language. You did, as far as like voice analysis, that type of thing, correct? As far as the inflection.
Not with them,
the,
no, that was a personal kind of hobby of mine. I'd say, like,
okay,
yeah, in training, you know, before going into the Bureau, I had interviewed thousands of victims and perpetrators of primarily sex crimes, child sex crimes. And so I was really into different techniques of deception detection and things like that. And so, but I'd say basic training is pretty minimal what you get in that aspect. And you know, go to get your polygrapher certification if you're going to do, you know, polygraphs and such, which I didn't do. But what I had kind of like, I guess you'd say self-taught and you know, my background in psychology, just decided to take upon myself taking what other experts and their opinions and compiling sort of a profile on what was happening in that conversation. And what I found was this blatantly you know, obvious to me that Bill Clinton is different from Obama, is different from Bush Jr., is different from all the others been interviewed on this, because he bloviates. He speaks when he's caught under stress,
right,
and just keeps talking. He has had a stroke, and so we took that into consideration. Some of the facial expressions, But he's unlike Obama, who Obama was very precise with his wording and more thoughtful before he speaks. Whereas when Bill Clinton, he did a lot of things like, for example, what I call going to the end alley. So his mind starts going. And he said, oh yeah, so as president, we went in and wanted to know about Area 51 Roswell. So I had all the Roswell papers reviewed. And, you know, and then he like pauses and he doesn't continue with some of his thoughts. And he says, but there was nothing there, you know? And so I did take apart each kind of sentence and everything that he did. And there was some very interesting, what I think were what we call, you know, masking techniques, where I felt was he was very frustrated that perhaps he knew a little more. That's probably the case, but he was frustrated that he was being told that he could get the information. And that went viral. I mean, a lot of news media picked up on that, and they called me a body language expert, which I'm not. But it propelled me to do the next one when Obama was on Jimmy Kimmel. And when Obama was asked the questions of what he looked into, people were calling me and it was like, you know, emailing like, are you going to do the, you know, analysis on him too? I said, what are you talking about? I had no idea he was on Kimmel the night before. But I looked at it and I felt compelled, because if I didn't do something, no one was going to. And number two, Jimmy joked about my previous analysis on Clinton. He didn't name my name, but I was the only one doing it, because he said to Obama, he says, now before you answer this, he goes, know that there's going to be people, you know, that are going to look at every little twitch, every little movement, every little, and Obama laughs. He goes, I know. Anyways, not to toot my own horn here, but it was because the LA Times did a story on my video just the day before and said, is he going to ask Obama the same questions? And the producers picked up on it, blah, blah, blah. So here I am thinking the president himself is claiming to be aware, you know, that I had done an analysis on Clinton and that he's going to be asked this question. And we know from the Podesta email leaks, when Hillary was asked a question, these things don't usually just happen by happenstance. They are given usually a very specific list, especially a sitting president, but they're going to be asked, how they're going to ask it. And if they don't like it, they're not going to bring that topic up. And that in itself, that Hillary Clinton was pushing to have the question asked. And we know it's no secret the Clintons had a platform of wanting to look into, you know, what was in the files and Roswell Area 51. Obama had Podesta in his ear, you know, telling him this is important, this is important.
Now, Clinton had Hubble with the State Department looking into it, and then the whole Rockefeller and
exactly the people that they tasked to go look into those things. You know, that was kind of, I think, the beginning before the Nimitz videos and stuff ever came out. It was sort of like the mainstream media ball that began rolling, you know, and so it kind of primed people for the moment when the videos were released, that we have official government interest, sitting presidents who are frustrated that they're not being told the truth, or they felt someone could have been lying to them. And then I think, and I still argue, there's evidence that if they're told anything, they're probably told enough to say, don't ask any more questions.
Don't ask any more questions.
You know,
and I think the obvious thing about that, and I absolutely agree with you, Ben, is that here was Bill Clinton on Jimmy Kimmel, and he's talking about demanding to see documents. Well, I'm the president. I want to see the bodies.
Right.
I want to see the wreckage. Why would I sell myself short and only want to see, you know, some writing, you know, on a piece of paper? And then we remember that George W. Bush was asked the same question by Kimmel regarding UFOs. So it became like a stuck record with Kimmel, in that every time he had someone of a high political rank, that especially a former president, that he would pose this question. And then lest we forget, when Donald Trump Jr. his last Father's Day interview with his
yeah.
dad. That was the
Mhm.
very last question. Dad, are you going to, release the Roswell files? And the point being, we would agree that they're not talking about any type of weather balloon or anything else conventional. They're perpetrating or perpetuating, I should say, not so much the myth, but the idea that there's still a there. There's a truth that is still being withheld that is even above the president.
Yeah.
And for anyone to say, it's long been explained away. No, because we have a long list of presidents, and the late Senator Barry Goldwater, and the late Congressman Steve Schiff of New Mexico, and the former Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico. So politics withstanding, we're in good company in that even the president isn't being told the full story about this.
Well, I think that came to a head with Hillary's interview, because I don't want to be asked about it, but when she finally got to speak on the topic, said, so if you become president, this was when she was running, said, if you become president, would you release the files to us? And she pauses and she goes, well, yeah. Unless there's something, of course, with national security reason, I would release the files. And it was like, then she said something else. Well, Bill Clinton has said it wouldn't be the first time that a president has been lied to. Right. Like if they were lying to him, but she said she wanted to go back. She wanted to review the records again. And so if you take those two things together, like you just said, how would that feel if she was possibly going to be the next sitting president, to know that there's a puppet master above you, that they're not even being the president, do you get to know everything about your country and the secrets, that there's someone else controlling it? And it was like they took it as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Which to me is kind of the scary and interesting thing at the same time, because she had been in the White House. She knew the frustration she and her husband had, with trying to get files, and they just took it as matter of fact that there are probably people lying to them, and that's why we're going to look at it again, and that maybe she wouldn't even be privy to it. And she's like, well, if it's national security, and that was my other thought was, well, of course it's national security, right? And that's what I'm going to say. That's why I don't have much hope that it's going to be able to come out that way. If they believe,
it's been their fallback
for
all these years. Whatever they don't want to discuss, it's national security.
Yeah.
And everybody just walks away with their tail between their legs.
They're empty promises. Couch it that way. So anyways, very, very interesting stuff. And so even with the entertainment world, we find a way that you can get witnesses or politicians involved to get their guard down a little bit. And when they think, and they should be completely relaxed, and they try to use humor, sometimes you'll see a switch, and you'll see a reversal and masking of these, what they're trying to conceal are very either emotions of fear, frustration, and you get the sense that there is something they're aware of that's more powerful than them. They don't like that they don't have that information access, or even have been somewhat intimidated, that don't go there.
Yeah.
Even we always quote like the former President Dwight Eisenhower and his last speech upon leaving office, when he warned us of the military-industrial complex. And if that serves as a harbinger of where we are today, and Eisenhower is one of just a handful of five-star generals. And he was chief of staff of the Army in 1947 when Roswell happened. So he would have been totally privy to every minute detail of the case. And yet in his own memoirs, he complained. He lamented the fact that even as the president, the Pentagon didn't tell him anything any longer. So just imagine, you're the commander in chief, and there's a government above you. And yet the media doesn't expose this. even all these Senate and congressional committees, they never let on to the fact that they're not being briefed on this subject. Now they all of a sudden feel they need to come up to speed. Well, that's where you should not accept that it's just a matter of national security. You've been deceived. You've been lied to all these years about the very existence of the phenomenon. So it's about time you get on our bandwagon, and it's about time you rely on us to also educate you as to what questions you need to pose to these puppet masters, as you even call them, Ben. So,
Yeah, and that's why we really appreciate the work you've done in keeping that connection and helping, because it's really important, that members of Congress and those who are trying to direct the policy get up to speed. There is no quick sheet. I've always said, like, I research a lot of phenomena, as well as Brittany. We do, the paranormal, the ghost hunting, the cryptids, and all this stuff. But ufology is, I think, entirely unique because a lot of it is historical, and you need to know where we've been to understand why we're at where we're at. And you can't just dip your foot in it. And so it does require some investment, to get up to speed and not just go off of rumors or things that, cases that people claim to have been solved or whatever. So I think for the first time, maybe not the first time, but there's a good opportunity here with new congressional hearings and things like that for it to get kind of that official stamp of approval that most people are waiting for, to say, oh, well, it was heard in Congress, and therefore the witnesses that came forward have a little bit more credibility, and that they're listening to these things. And so again, it's really great that we have someone such as you that's respected, they can go to for that.
Well, thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. And yes, we are in contact. We had a meeting again the other day. We've even been told, have your case on Roswell ready to come to Washington. Whether it's just whether it's just a bluff again or not, but we've always been ready, because we've also been the ones that have been pushing that unless they finally would provide immunity for whistleblowers, that pilots, both commercial, military, and other people of high renown have had experiences that they could finally, at no risk of loss of their pensions and government reprisal. We hear, the IRS is paying people visits whenever they want to intimidate somebody, a potential witness, that type of thing. Well, that has to be, eliminated. We have to stop that. People have to finally be allowed to go on the record. And this may be our one and only chance. So if we don't give it all we got this time around, it may never happen again, because they'll take it as they'll take another victory lap, and it's like, well, we just bit that bullet once again, and so nothing to worry about.
Exactly. And you just kick the can down the road, for when it becomes, I mean, that's kind of been my theme here too. And I was lucky enough to convince Georgetown to let me do my master's thesis project on basically, are we prepared for such an event of disclosure? And, in researching all of that, the fact that we don't have a plan and we don't have mitigation for it, and that it just basically is buried again, and we kick it down the road. You got to remember, if what we're dealing with, let's say the phenomena is otherworldly, extraterrestrial, if that's the case, which does seem, Roswell, I think, is a perfect example that makes that case. Whoever they are, could at any moment come down and say, enough, we're going to announce it, or we're going to have a display in, Phoenix Lights times 100 in every major city, and then deal with it, and if that were the case, and we've just kind of been pushing this off because it's inconvenient, because it doesn't have the political backing, it's like a war that happens in another country across the world. If it's not on our doorstep, we distract ourselves with so many silly things so many silly things that we, politically, socially, entertainment wise, that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's got to be prevalent and salient in your face, I think, before the public and politicians take notice. And that has been a change recently.
Yes.
It's been enough in last couple of years. It's been enough. It's been the securitization, of taking these things and put them within the national security military, arena, and saying this is a national security threat. That's great. But that's only one way of doing that to get the attention it needs. And so I guess my point is, it's unfortunate, although we're taking interest in it, we're not thinking about the next step. What the next step is, okay, now if you believe the phenomena is real, we don't quite know where it's coming from, what's causing it, but what is our mitigation plan? And that's where I've been trying to work with, indirectly through, as they're going to put together Arrow, and different, organizations, I should say, trying to consult or help in that process, is to get them to take that seriously. And so, look, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, but if certain things don't line up correctly, it's not necessarily the ETs or whoever it is that I think the threat, quote unquote, would be from. It's us, ourselves, and dealing with that transition and what I call reality compromising that, and everything that entails. And we learned a lot about that through COVID. And I know we're kind of running over time here. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's very interesting stuff. There needs to be more studies on it.
This will be part 2.
Yeah.
We certainly will have you back, Ben. But you are absolutely correct that we have to consider also the aftermath. We have to look at not only, I like to believe that 3 of us, for example, we are doing all we can to prepare the public. We are making the subject, we're removing the taboo, and it's about time that the government has now done the same thing.
Yeah.
And so this is a major accomplishment that I think we can all pat ourselves on the back, that we've stayed course. We haven't given up on it, because if we accept that it is true, we're talking the biggest story of the millennium. And who wouldn't want to be part of that?
Absolutely.
How do you turn a blind eye at that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the exciting, I think, I guess, is that we're living at this time where maybe within our lifetime it starts to come together, and a little bit, I should say, concerning things, like as you look around you in the field and you see how our own field is just so disparate, and you got so many extremes, and it's like, who am I to come along and say it's not this way or it's not that way like you believe it? I can't really say that, but if it all comes down and people are looking for experts and guidance, there's going to be a lot of confusion, and so I do really appreciate the sticking to the science and the different approaches that many are trying to take with it, because you're going to need each of those approaches to help comfort people, help transition them, help maybe convince them of the new reality. Going to need some people who strictly want to hear the physical science. You're going to need some people who want to know how their own religion or beliefs are going to assimilate, cope, make use of the new reality. You're going to need all of these approaches. Yep. And that's why I don't think there's just one single answer of how it should be done. No. Anyways, I can go on.
No, we don't have the owners, the alien owner's manual. So, we don't even have page 1. So it will be the ultimate. We're all back in school, children, and but some will be ahead of the others, and I like to think we've earned our place in that. It's not that we've been correct all along, as much as we are mature enough in accepting the phenomenon that we live with it. it doesn't impact our day-to-day lives in the sense that I like to cite back in 1947 again, that the best example I can actually describe is that at the time, all those people who were involved, they lived out the rest of their lives. They raised their families. They kept going to church. You know, they kept going to work, and they were there. It was unprecedented. You know, they saw it firsthand, and yet they went on.
And that will be most people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And here
that's
we are.
What I argue. I think that'll be most people will cope with it in some way. It depends on the degree of information's released, the degree of how we're integrated, the degree. But the scary thing is that there's I don't think it takes a majority, just a small percentage of the crazy for it to cause cascading effects on the rest of society. But one last thought. I was thinking, you remember the ending scene of Close Encounters, and you've got Dr. Hynek's little cameo there, you know, with his pipe, and he's watching him come down. And I would hope that would be the best case scenario where they're not adversarial. They come down and there's sort of like an exchange program. And it's like, hey, you know, that stuff about abductions, we're sorry, but we don't need to do that anymore. Now come aboard. You can come spend some time with us. We'll lend you some of our, you know, people or beings, and we can know each other, you know, maybe sit down for a good meal. My question would be for both of you though, would you, if it played out like that, would you be one of those to board the guy? Okay, yeah, I'm ready. I trust that you're not going to harm me. Let's go.
Go ahead, Brit.
I don't know. I think for me, it's a risk. It's a risk for me either way, because I think as like a parent, I'm more concerned about like my kids and something happening. And like, I just left my kids without a mom. So I think if I didn't have any of that risk behind me, I probably would like, I'm going to see if I'm going to feel this out, you know? Otherwise I think I would second guess because of my family at first. I would be like, I don't know. I think I need more time. We need to have a few more dinners off site, if that's okay.
For me, it would be that final scene in that episode of The Twilight Zone when she's yelling up at him as he's boarding the alien spaceship. It's a cookbook to serve man. And so I don't know if I'd want to be on their menu.
I was gonna say, you are the main course there, Brittany.
I think I'm good. I'll stay home.
No, I agree with you. I think if I were single still and didn't have kids, unless they could return me at the same time that I left, and sort of like that, the time travel, and I have an age, and I'll tell my kids, look, I'll be gone for 5 minutes, okay? But yet I've spent a couple years with them doing things. I'd still miss them, you know, but that would be weird.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I can't.
Some thought.
Sounds like a book, Ben. Sounds like a book.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't sound like Monkeys from Space.
Or a new TV series. Yes.
Yeah, TV series. That might be an episode.
Would you go? We're going to have you back because we could go on for hours, but we do have to wrap it up.
All right. Well, it's been great. So I guess I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. I'm going to be at the Ozark UFO conference that weekend in April. Was it 13th and 14th?
Right.
And then
you're getting in the Saturday afternoon, so you'll be
Saturday afternoon.
That afternoon, and then all day on Sunday when we wrap up.
So leave me either an address, a direction, or something.
You'll be picked up.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We're just going to leave you at the airport.
In fact,
leave me a treasure map.
We're going to have a Zoom meeting of all the participants the week before. And just go over everything.
You could make it fun and just leave me like a map, you know, with some clues. And
now we're thinking of just taking you to another location, dropping you off and telling you they're over the hill. And
Yeah.
you keep walking over 1 hill, 2 hill, 3 hill, 4 hill, and then you might realize they got me, but no.
Yeah, just wear a Bigfoot suit and walk that.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Ben, real quick in closing, can you tell the audience where they can contact or connect with you online?
Yeah, so I am kind of taking a break off of social media, but I do I'm on Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. benhansen.com, HNSEN is my website. So upcoming events we post on there. It's a big year for events right now. It's really good to see a lot of these conferences coming back. So I think we've got like 4 or so up there now, and that's the first half of the year because we gotta wait my first daughter to be born in May, and then after I stick around and be a good husband for a little bit, and I'll do a little bit more traveling towards the end.
Well, there you go. All right, well, that's awesome. At least we know where you can connect with you, and of course, congratulations on the baby.
Absolutely.
And a healthy baby girl.
Thank you.
And I pray for a healthy delivery and process for the whole family, and everybody gets to enjoy those wonderful moments, because it was for us on our end too. So take it all in,
Thank you.
enjoy it if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when you come to the dig, we'll make sure that we take you to the right location, because you need to get home.
He's got to get back, Don. You've got to get back. We can't, have fun with this one this time. Next time.
Well, we have to give credit to my wife too for letting me go, because this normally I'm only allowed to go to events, where I've been invited as an appearance, and I'm there to speak, and they provide a little bit of money and stuff, because this is my full-time jobs, at the moment. And so it's like I'm only allowed to go for something that is purely for the curiosity, the attainment of knowledge and the discovery. That's something I didn't really sell in the package to my wife, but she understands it's important to me. So we give her credit for letting me go. It's I've got my pass to go on adventure for the weekend.
She's a rock star anyway.
I thank her very much. So
yeah, she's a rock star anyway. Carrying
great.
Yes.
What's that?
I said she's a rock star anyway. She takes care of a lot, and she supports you all through thick and through. So you got it.
I know, with my big gigantic babies.
Yeah, exactly. So. Don't forget that. Don't ever forget that. As a mom who's been pregnant, don't ever forget that. Pat her on the back every once in a while. Massage your feet. Yeah, I'm bringing my husband with me, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to have a good time. Ben, you already know my husband, John, so we'll have a really good time. It'll be a fun event. So it'll be his first dive into the field, which will be interesting.
He'll be on his phone the whole time. But
no, I told him he had to work. And he was like, "You mean work from the hotel room?" Right. I was like, "No, your butt's going to be in the desert. Have fun."
Your job is to hold the Geiger counter, and anything that comes out of the ground, you go explore first.
Exactly. We already have your whole mission planned out, honey. Have good luck with it. Anyway, this was an awesome episode. Thanks, Ben, for making time. I know you are busy, so thank you so much for coming out and coming on the show for us and joining us. And I'm so glad I finally got to hear the story. It has been literally years I have waited to get us together. Even though last year we were together in Roswell, we didn't get a chance to talk about the historical story, but Dawn. So I'm glad we were able to discuss it today.
Dawn and I normally tell it with the lights out because we still glow.
Yes, we still glow. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you'll see that in Roswell. We'll see what we can rig up.
Lights on Roswell. I want to see you two glow.
Get some phosphorus tubes, and we'll freak everybody out.
Yeah.
Have it around our neck
But all joking aside, thank you to everyone who's listening to the episode today. Again, if you have any special requests or guests or anything in particular you want us to talk about or brief about, send us an email to noearthlyexplanation@gmail.com. Again, like Ben said, you can reach to him on any of his social pages if you have any questions or further information in regards to the fields and topics he's into. He does everything that goes bump in the night, literally. You can listen to our podcast anywhere from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and I always have to look and read through because we have added where you can hear us. So pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, guess what? You'll find us. You can follow us on our social pages at Facebook, No Earthly Explanation, or on Instagram at No Earthly Explanation. You can follow me personally on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is Brit Barbieri Official. Instagram is Brit Investigates. You can follow Don, my other partner in crime, on Instagram. He is Don47Tom. And on Facebook, he's Donald Raymond Schmidt, and that's RAYMOND. So in the meantime, everybody get your boots on the ground, investigate, research, look into whatever topic that interests you. I encourage you to do so, as I know my two partners here would also agree. And until next time, you boys stay out of trouble. This was awesome. We got to do it again.
No.
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 Just a flat out no.
Trouble will find you. Got to stir things up. Thank you, Ben. We look forward to the next time together, and see you in a few weeks. And Brit, till the next time.
A quest is a search for something. And every week, the Quest podcast will show you how we know what we know through interviews with people that have incredible stories of dedication and perseverance. I'm your host, Todd Fisher. Join me in this thought-provoking and inspiring podcast of discovery. Find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fisher and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure and visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.